Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, part of the Believe Network. Happy Saturday, everybody. It feels like it's been such a long time since we've done a recruiting show, considering the run that they went on coming out of that June 13th weekend. But we are back for another commitment show. An elite defensive lineman in Elijah Golden just committed to Notre Dame for the 2026 class. He is the 27th commit overall in this class. He's the 11th defensive commit and the 4th defensive line commit. Brian, this is a big one. Big one that's been on our radar for quite some time.
You think? He was not joking when he said that Al Washington has been recruiting him since his freshman year. He took his first visit in June of 2023. Now, that was when he was going into his sophomore season, but they had been on him prior to that. And this is back when he was at IMG Academy. He obviously is originally from Virginia. He transferred to IMG, and then this past year transferred to Cardinal Mooney in Sarasota, Florida. But this is a guy that Al Washington has been on for a very, very long time. And when you can get a talented player, and Trev, you pointed this out to me before the show. I mean, all four of their defensive line commits are from the South. And Elijah's the most northern because he's technically from Virginia, but he's obviously played high school football in Florida. But you've gone into the South. You've beaten Alabama. You've beaten Oklahoma. You've beaten Georgia for other players that are in this class. But without Elijah Golden, you beat those big-time schools. And that's a huge win for Al Washington. And it's ironic because he's the last player to commit, but he's probably the first player in this class that Al Washington really made a priority in this defensive line class. And then what was interesting is, you know, when you look at it at Trevor is we'll talk more about it in the backstory, but like this is one that there was a time this seemed like a no-brainer. But then obviously some big time schools started getting in the way. And what's funny and what just shows the difference between this recruiting staff and past recruiting staffs is Al Washington never flinched. The staff never flinched. In the past, they'd start like kind of losing ground and they'd kind of panic and go after another guy. And this staff went after other players, but they never backed off Elijah. They stayed consistent. Al Washington kept building the relationship. He never tried to do some of the things they've done in the past of, try to get hey, you better commit now or you're going to lose your spot. Or he just stayed the course and was able to get him. And man, just a big time commitment. It's an incredibly talented player. And again, he's been a must get player for Al Washington for a long time. And his position has evolved a little bit over time. So at first it seemed like he was an interior player. Then he lost some weight, tried to play outside. Now he's back to understanding, I think, that he's more of an interior player. But either way, this is a big-time pickup for Notre Dame. And as you know, Trev, anytime you can go into the South and beat Alabama for a big-time defensive lineman that they wanted, that's certainly a win. You can beat Brent Venables for a big-time defensive lineman that he wants. That's a big-time win for Notre Dame.
Absolutely. Couldn't echo that anymore. And how big of a pickup is this? I mean, Irish Breakdown gives Elijah Golden a 5-star upside grade. He is ranked the number 85 overall player in the country by ESPN. We're talking about somebody who is 6'4", he's 270. Like you said, he's from Virginia, but plays football in Florida. He's attending Cardinal Mooney High School right now. But listen, absolutely huge pickup. You guys know how we're going to get down today. We are going to
Trev, but real quick before we dive into the backstory, I can't lie to you, man. And we talked about this before the show. I was confident. I've been told for weeks that Notre Dame was going to get this kid. And then I was told he gave Notre Dame the final word earlier in the week. So, I mean, I've got my story written. I got my class impact story written. I've got all that done. And I know it's going to happen. And I'm used to kids playing the hat game and all that kind of stuff. And I've never panicked. That was the first time a kid picked up another team's hat. And the way he was acting, I was like, did he flip? Did he already change? Like, is he going to Oklahoma? And like he did, he's like backed up. He's trying to get. And I'm like, holy moly, and then I see the other hat come flying in, and I was like, whew, okay. All right, we're still going to have a show today. That was the first time I got duped, I'm not going to lie to you, with the hat game for a Notre Dame kid. I really did get a little bit for a second there, I was like, what's happening right now? Like, what's going on right now? But big pickup from Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the fact that he actually put it on. Like a lot of other kids who kind of like pick it up and and then they'll toss it off to he put it on and then took a step back. And I was
Started this Oklahoma. Like, I was like, what? Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
but it got us. It definitely got us. But
like somebody in the chat you pointed out to me before the show, like, I mean, it seemed obvious when the show starts because he's got the green balloons in the back, green, and it's just like, yeah, it's okay.
yeah.
It's, and then he grabs the Oklahoma out. I was like, uh-oh, this is about to get crazy. But yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a good one. But listen, guys, you know how we're going to get down here. We're going to talk backstory. We're going to talk class impact. And of course, we're going to dive into the film. And with this seemingly being likely the last commit of the 26 class, we're going to talk about what's next. And we're going to talk about down the road stuff as well. But Brian, backstory, one of my favorite parts of recruiting shows.
Well, as I stated earlier in the outro, or at the beginning, Trev, in the intro, this is a recruit that's been on the board for Notre Dame for years. I mean, this is a kid that Al Washington's been recruiting since his freshman year. He made his first visit in June of 2023 and has just been steady with Notre Dame. And at the time, back in 2023 and early on, I mean, it seemed like a no-brainer he was going to pick Notre Dame, and not because his name's Elijah Golden. And you think, like, how's a kid named Golden not pick Notre Dame? Yeah, that's kind of he felt about Dallas Golden last year, Golden Tate back in the 07 class. But it just, they were the big school on him. They got on him way before any of the other big time schools really got on him. Now, he had a lot of offers early on, like most IMG kids do, but there weren't a lot of players that were, or weren't a lot of the big time schools that were like pushing for him early on. And Notre Dame did. And Al Washington's been on him for a while. He's made like 5 or 6 visits to campus and obviously made an official visit late in the process. And I thought Notre Dame did a great job getting Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Utade on campus that weekend. But, this is one of those long game recruitments for Al Washington. And you got to give him a lot of credit. As I've said earlier, we've seen Notre Dame coaches panic over far less than we've seen with Elijah Golden. And there were some people reporting that they thought Alabama led and Oklahoma led. I never felt that those schools overcame Notre Dame, but they certainly made it interesting. And so what happened was, as he started to get more love from other schools, like other big time schools, I think that caught his attention. And, he'd had sort of that long-term relationship with Notre Dame. And then all these other schools start coming at him and he starts visiting and they're laying out the red carpet for him. And I think Elijah got like, okay, like I want to go out there and see what else is out there. I think for a while there, it seemed like it was going to be Notre Dame. And the whole time, Notre Dame just stayed the course, and just kept building that relationship. And when I had a feeling that this was going to go well for Notre Dame in the end, is he made a spring visit to Notre Dame or to Alabama. Not the official from the summer, but there was a spring one where he was at spring ball. And I talked to somebody who was like, him and Al Washington were like texting back and forth the entire visit. He was like, hey, coach, it's like normal. And I'm like, yeah, when a kid's on visiting Alabama and he's spending half his time on campus texting Al Washington, that's a pretty good sign. But I think that speaks to the ability of Al Washington to be patient with this one. Like, there's no need to panic. There's no need to go get somebody else or to drop them. There was other guys they won at D tackle, and I think if the right player came along, they'd still look for another guy. But this was a guy that was a must-get recruit at the very beginning of the process. So is Rodney Dunham. Rodney Dunham's been on the board a long time for Notre Dame also. But when you can play the long game and get a kid like this and beat Alabama and beat Oklahoma, it's big. And I will say, obviously Al Washington did a phenomenal job on this recruitment. And the staff as a whole did well, but Al Washington drove this. But this is also one where I think Rodney Dunham and to a degree Ebenezer Utade and Tiki Hola, but especially Rodney Dunham. But the 3 commits did a great job of really building that relationship with Elijah Golden. But I got to tell you, man, Rodney Dunham doesn't do it publicly. But from different sources I've talked to, he is very engaged in recruiting for Notre Dame behind the scenes. He's not on Twitter telling everybody about it, which is fine, right? That's not a shot at anybody. For example, I love how Javion Osborne is all over Twitter with Notre Dame. That's a great thing, but you also need those behind-the-scene guys. And Rodney Dunham has done that, and I think that was something that was really good, impactful, along with a lot of other factors for Elijah Golden. But just talking to some different sources, I think that relationship, that the honesty that Notre Dame had with him, the fact that they had been on it from the beginning, And then Notre Dame did a great job of selling the big picture aspect of what this school can provide. And that's something that I was told his family was very intrigued by. It's like, yes, football's important to them, but they also understand that, even if our son goes to college as an All-American, becomes a first-round NFL draft pick, and becomes a Hall of Famer, most likely by his mid-30s, he's got to find a new career. You know what I mean? And that education piece is going to be real important to that. And Notre Dame did a great job of selling how you can do both. I mean, Al Washington did a great job of, there's some players that Al Washington has coached that are very similar to Elijah Golden. Obviously, Riley Mills is one, but even going back to BC with Zach Allen, who obviously just signed a big contract with the Broncos, is another, edge player, interior kind of guy that's, 6'4", 290 plus, that was very disruptive. You saw what Riley Mills did last year. So Al Washington did a good job with this too, of pointing to say, hey, look, these guys are like you. Look what we did with them. Look what I did with them. That's what we can do with you. And that's just one of many things that really won this in the end. But I'll say for the last 2 years, all but 2 months, I was pretty confident he was going to pick Notre Dame. But there was a time this spring into the summer where I was like, I'm not quite as sure. But coming out of the visit on the end of June, it was, okay, Notre Dame's the team to beat. And you just never heard anything other than Notre Dame's team to beat. And Oklahoma did make a late charge and all that, and they gave them a lot to think about. But I never felt like Notre Dame had to overcome anybody else. Everybody else was trying to overcome Notre Dame, and at the end of the day, nobody could do it.
It's a good spot to be in, that's for sure. I mean, let me ask you this, because this is kind of more of my genuine curiosity, and he mentioned it in his commitment video. You brought it up in the backstory about how quickly Al Washington got on him. When you look at a talented athlete like Elijah Golden, and you kind of just go based on overall ceiling, you're looking at base athletic traits, is it kind of risky to jump on somebody that early as a true freshman? Because you talked about big players coming in late. How do you kind of balance that? Because you play both sides.
Yeah, I think with him, it was just one of those things where he clicked with Elijah early on. And he saw the upside. He saw broad shoulders. He saw long arms, like very long arms. He saw a guy that has some athleticism. And then the other thing, from talking to some different sources, I think the one thing is as he started to talk to Elijah Golden, he realized how much of a Notre Dame fit he was. That was part of it as well. But, when you've been doing this a long time, Trev, sometimes you can see these young kids and be like, look, I'm taking a risk, but if I'm going to take a risk, I'm taking a risk on a kid that big. The other thing is, recruiting him as a freshman doesn't require you take his commitment as a freshman. And that's something that I think that we have to give Al Washington a lot of credit for in his classes. He was one of the very first big-time defensive line coaches to be like, Ebenezer Utade is a dude. We got to go get him. George and all those other schools came later. He was one of the very first coaches to really go after Ebenezer, to the point where he was like, dude, you're a dude, and we want you in this class. Not like, hey, we like you, but it was, we want you in this class. And then he was the same way with Elijah Golden. And also, he's smart enough to know a kid going to IMG, you better get on him early before all those schools get on him if you want to have a chance in the end. So I think it's just smart recruiting by Al Washington to get on those guys early. I think he was on Tiki Hola a little bit sooner than a lot of people. He was on Rodney Dunham going back to his sophomore year as well. So you got to give him a lot of credit as he was putting the 25 and 24 classes together, having sort of some of that forward thinking of guys he liked. And I think the other thing too is, especially over the last 6-7 months, is there hasn't been any other voices saying, hey, no, we like this guy, we like this guy. It was Al Washington saying, no, we're going to go after the guys I want now. And we see the results. He didn't bat 1,000. They wanted Alex Viejo, but 4 out of 5 ain't bad. I mean, I'd say 4 out of 6. They like Drake Quinn too, but Drake Quinn was sort of a cherry on top after getting Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Utade. But look, Al Golden went big game hunting in this recruiting class on the D line, and he's going to come home with a monster class, an absolutely monster class. Trev, you're muted.
That was weird. I did not mute myself. That was odd. All right. Well, like I was saying,
You look like you had some great stuff to say too, man. I was like, dang it.
Man, I was spitting. we were getting
straight fire. I knew it. Straight fire.
But anyways, Al Washington has probably been one of the more scrutinized coaches on the staff in terms of bringing in that elite level of talent and getting, players to perform to their ceiling. And domino one fell last year as we just watched Notre Dame's defensive line reload and replace and still be an effective unit. But the caveat was always, well, what's he doing on the recruiting trail? And I think this class was a big resounding, hey, this is what I'm doing on the recruiting trail. Like we talked about in the opening of the video, this is the 4th defensive line commit. It is also the 4th defensive line commit from the South. Dunham and Utade are from North Carolina. Tiki Hola is from Texas. Golden is from Virginia, but he's currently playing high school ball in Florida right now. This is an absolutely huge class, or a huge defensive line class. It's another big one for perception as well. You go down south and you beat out Alabama and Oklahoma and Virginia Tech, a major college from his home state, who he likely grew up watching. He mentioned that in his commitment video. What did you like about Virginia Tech? It's like, that's the home team, man. It's the Hokies. And so when you're able to go down
college and Trev, because he is from Virginia, and as much as you love this, you love the Wahoos and you love the Hokies, when you're from Virginia, that there's no place like Notre Dame, and he was smart enough to understand that. So they're different in VA, man. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I'm from Virginia and played high school ball in Virginia. I mean, it has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it, I'm sure. But yes, we'll make them different there.
People have been saying, dude, VA is just different. That's what I've been hearing.
It is. Good call. Good call. But no, I do love the fact, though, in all seriousness, Trevor, that, look, are there talented defensive linemen up north? Of course. Are there talented defensive linemen out west? Of course. Are there greater volume of those players in the South? Of course. And Notre Dame being able to go down there. And what's interesting is this past 2025 class was the exact opposite. Chris Burgess was from Illinois. Joe Reek was from Illinois. Dom Hulak was from Illinois. You had Davion Dixon from Florida, and then you had Gordy Solstead from Ohio. So it's like it's going to be different every year. And I don't know that the goal was to, hey, let's go down south and get players from south this year. It was, I'm looking for the best players. Last year, one of the best players happened to be from Chicago Simeon. This year, one of the best players is from Cardinal Mooney and South Garner and Myers Park in Florida, and then obviously Bastrop in Texas. So it worked out that way. But you're going to be going up against more big dogs when you go down south for these guys, and that's exactly what they did, and they got the wins.
Yeah.
Huge wins.
Well, absolutely major wins. But when you talk class impact specifically, we've talked about it: 11th defensive commit, 4th defensive lineman, 27th commit in the class. But one of the common themes, and Brian, you and I were talking about this before the show, is the fact that now add defensive line to the list of position groups in this class that can all be on the field together. Yeah. You can have Utade and Dunham coming off the edge while you have Hola and you have Golden lining up on the interior of the defensive line. Same thing could be said about the secondary, the offensive line, the receiving core to a degree, depending on what formation they roll out in, the tight ends as well. So this has been another great complementary recruiting class as well, because you've mentioned before, hey, Texas A&M had that major recruiting class. You kind of recruited 6 guys to play 2 spots.
Right. I mean, they got 8 guys, and I thought 5, 6 of them were kind of better suited for the interior as opposed to being on the edge. And when you look at this group, Trev, to your point, it's an absolute brilliant point, especially with Notre Dame going to more of a true right-left end position. But even if in the traditional big end Viper, you had Rodney Dunham, who I think projects to be a guy that could be an Isaiah Foskey type of guy, who ultimately, if they had better players at the Viper at the time, would have moved over to the end position. And, you get a guy like Ebenezer Utade, who's just a twitchy, just athletic, really long edge player that projects to be an impact pass rusher. You've got Tiki Hola, who when he was at Notre Dame measured in, I think 6'3.5", 6'4", and was like almost 305. Big-bodied kid, just massive young man who's still only 16 years old, that is a pure interior guy. And, can play some 3 technique, but obviously projects as a potential nose. And the way that Notre Dame uses the nose obviously is a little bit different than some other teams. They like guys that can be more productive, can be more impactful. and Tiki certainly brings that. So then you go after Elijah Golden, and one of the concerns I had for a while is that there was a time when during that period when I thought Notre Dame was fading a little bit. Part of the issue was you had a lot of teams telling Elijah Golden, no, you're an edge, you're an edge, you're an edge, and so he started to, I think, kind of buy into that a little bit, and Notre Dame stayed true to, like, yeah, of course you're going to come in and have that opportunity, but like, dude, this is where your future is ideally suited, is this Riley Mills type of guy where, like Riley started off on the edge in year 1 and 2, and then, moved inside at the end of his second year and, became that sort of difference maker as a quick penetrating pass rushing 3 technique. And that's how they envision Elijah Golden. And so you're talking about, you've got your 2 edge players, you've got your big bodied, A gap player, and now you've got your twitchy, disruptive, 3 technique, a kid who, as a junior in high school in Florida, had 61 tackles, 29 tackles for loss, and 10 sacks, and still has a lot of technical things he's going to have to improve upon, which we'll talk about during the film breakdown. But it's a great point, Trevor. These guys can play. You can put this 4-man group on the field together and play them if that opportunity ever comes, and that's important. I mean, you can recruit the 5 best offensive linemen in the country, but if they're all 5 centers and none of them project to play tackle, you don't have a great offensive line. If you recruit the 5 best, highest ranked nose tackles in the country and none of them project to play on the edge, you don't have much of a defensive line. You're going to have great nose tackles, but you're not going to be very good on the edge. I love the balance of this class. And look, Al Washington's a guy that there's been a lot of, he's become a very polarizing figure over the years, going back to the Justin Scott mess and all that stuff that came along. But since then, he's really just kind of grinded out good class. And now that he's got a little bit of a, he's got a chance to put some of his guys in the NFL and develop All-Americans at Notre Dame. And the team is the product on the field with the team. The defense is better. Now, all of a sudden, he's been able to land some of these guys. And I think, too, what's helped him is this cycle is all 4 of the committed players came after the season ended, when it was no more, well, the recruiting operation likes this guy, but the D-line coach likes this guy. It was, now it's guys that I want. And he was able to prioritize those players and then go get them. And I think that was important, too. And he's really restocked this defensive line class. And when you look at it, Trev, what was important about this cycle, and I wrote about this in the Class Impact article, is they signed 4 players in the 2024 class and 5 defensive linemen in last year's class. It's 9 guys in 2 years. So coming into the 26 cycle, depth wasn't as much of a need as now we're going with impact talent. And 4 was the minimum number. They wanted 2 inside and 2 outside. That was the minimum. Would they have added a 5th if Drake Quinn wanted to come? You betcha. Would they have added a 5th if Alistair Viejo wanted to come? You betcha. Because if Viejo would have committed her name, they're still going after Elijah Golden. Believe that. But it was a thing where, okay, 4's the minimum. That's the need. But his focus was on high-level talent. And he took a bit of a risk in this cycle, Trev, in that he didn't really expand the board a whole lot. Once we kind of got into the spring, there was like 7 or 8 guys on the board. It was the 4 committed players. It was Alistair Viejo. It was Drake Quinn. It was Kari Wilder. And then there's a couple other guys like the Marcus Alameda kid. There's Damari Simeon that he was on. But he put them kind of on the back burner early. There's the David Schweitzer kid from out in Washington that they were on a little bit, but he put him on the back burner. And it really came down to like this group of 7 players, and we have to get at least 4 from this group. And they were all high-level, high-ceiling players. And so even with the guys that they didn't add to the class, the plan was obvious. We're not looking for depth in this class. We're looking for dudes in this class. And he got 4 dudes in this class, Trev. I mean, all 4, 3 of them, Golden, Dunham, and Utade, all are 5-star upside guys on my board. And Tiki's 4.5-star, which is that of a top 75 player. And he wasn't that far away from the 5-star upside guy. If he can have a senior year that builds on what he did as a junior, and they're going to play him more inside as a senior, which is something I want to see. The thing that I struggle with a little about Tiki, projecting Tiki entirely to 5-star, is he played so much on the edge as a junior. And so it's like, oh, how is he going to hold up against constant double teams and things like that? Well, we're going to see that this year. And if he does what I think he's going to do, You could honestly have a class where all 4 guys are 5-star upside guys, and I've never had a class with that many 5-star upside guys on the D line. And the fact that it's all 4 of them, it's not like you signed 7 and 4 of them have that. You signed 4, and they could potentially all 4 have that. So I tell you, man, it's really impressive the job that Al Washington did in the cycle. Really impressive. He knew who he wanted. He knew what he was looking for. He had a small board. He went after that board, and he got the job done. And you could argue that the three longest term must get guys he got, and Tiki Hola, Roddy Dunham, and Elijah Golden, guys he was on for a long time. They got on Itade sooner than everybody else, but he was still a winter guy. Like, they were recruiting him in the fall, but they didn't really turn up the heat till this spring. The other 3 guys, they've been on for well over a year, if not 2 years. And when you put that amount of time in the top players, you need to get them. And he did. And you say, if Notre Dame's going to compete with the big boys, you got to go out there and get D linemen that Georgia wants, that Clemson wants, that Texas wants, that Bama wants. Well, that's exactly what they did. Itade and Dunham both had Georgia as one of the top contenders for them. Georgia wanted both of them. Alabama wanted Elijah Golden, and you went out and beat all of them for these 3 players that we talked about. And then obviously, Tiki Hola down in Texas. So absolutely phenomenal job by Al Washington to put this class together. You now have one of the 5 best, in my opinion, running back hauls, tight end hauls, wide receiver hauls, O-line hauls, secondary hauls, and now defensive line hauls in the country. This is an elite class. But I do think that Elijah Golden, and I said this before, was sort of the final piece to say to where you went from, it's a great class, but it needs another D lineman. It's a great class, but it needs a little bit more impact on the D line. Now it's just a great class because you now got that. And that's what Elijah Golden is for Notre Dame.
Well, that was going to be one of my follow-up questions is nationally, were they now considered a top 5 now that you have Elijah Golden in this class? Do you have a specified ranking as to where somewhere in that top 5, or you just know
they're in the top 3 for me? Like it's not, I haven't put the list together yet, but it's like, I'll look at their class and then I'll break down the film of other teams' classes. And I'm like, yeah, I do it like this. Would I trade Notre Dame for that group? Would I trade them for that group? And do they meet need? Do they meet their needs? Do they have positional flexibility if that's needed? Sometimes you like, dude, we've loaded it in. We need 3D tackles on one end in this class. Did that team meet their needs? And there's very few defensive line classes that I look at and say, I think that's better than Notre Dame's. Very few. They're in that conversation amongst you're one of the 5 best. I think that the running back class is in conversation for the best. I think they're with Texas A&M. I think the tight end class is in that conversation with Georgia for the best. Georgia's got a heck of a tight end class as well. And I think the receiver class is not in the same as the top 2-3, but I think it's in the conversation for one of the 5 best. I'd say their range is probably 4 to 7. D-line class now to me is solidly a top 5 class. Same thing with the secondary, where they're in the conversation for the best secondary in the country. Now your D-line class is top 5. And some of the classes that are better than theirs, that I would say are arguably better than theirs, are better because there's 5-6 guys in it, because they needed 5 or 6 guys. Notre Dame didn't need 5 or 6 guys. And so I think that was very impactful. And look, Brian Smith and I have been talking about this for years. 2 of the hardest positions for Notre Dame to consistently get like high-level players. And I don't mean high-level like the high upside guys that like not a lot of big-time schools went after Boubacar Traore. He was always a raw, projectable player. But I'm talking about big-time players that not only have the ceiling, but have the recruiting pedigree, the recruiting profile that other top schools are going after is corner and defensive end. And what we have seen from Al Washington and Mike Mickens in the last couple of years is they're now able to go toe-to-toe with anybody in the country for the guys they want. And their ability to evaluate players has been strong, and to land those players has been strong. But you're also seeing, guys, if we're being honest about this, if Al Washington did the same exact job with these players and he was at Purdue, they're not committing to Purdue. That's just the reality of it. What it is he did a tremendous job, but the product he has to sell now is even better than it was when he first took over, because you're talking about a team that's coming off of a 14-2 season. And I'll tell you, the thing's been real impactful from some of the people that I've talked to around these recruits, watching that D-line play the way it did in the last 3 games without Riley Mills, without Jordan Patojo, without Boubacar, without Jason Onye, made some of these people that are around these players say, I think they know what they're doing over there. Like they got this next man in thing going really well. And the fact that they played so many D linemen was something that appealed to them as well. Like, look, I can come in, and if I'm the second guy, I'm going to play. But I could be like a Logan Thomas type of guy where I'm only just a pass rusher right now because I'm undersized. But if I can pass rush at a high level, they're going to put me in on the 4th down play with the game on the line against Georgia, which is exactly what they did with Logan Thomas. And I think all those things have really factored into why Al Washington was able to, on top of his just working his tail off, is why he was able to go out there and put together a D-line class like this, which is just big time. And you can't say anymore like the recruiting coordinator was responsible for this and things like that. It is now he identified these players, he built the board, he went out and got them, and now Notre Dame's got a D-line class that can stack up against anybody's. And when Notre Dame starts recruiting corners and D linemen at an elite level and running backs at an elite level, it's like, uh-oh. Rest of college football is like, uh-oh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, it's being put on notice. That's for sure. We talk a lot in the show about sustained success. How do you do that? By getting dominant recruiting classes like this. And other outlets are starting to see it. We talked about it before. FanDuel has Notre Dame at plus 410 odds. It's the best odds in the country, tied with Ohio State, to go undefeated this year. And I'm willing to bet if Notre Dame continues to recruit at this level, that's going to be something that's pretty consistent over the next coming years.
What do teams that compete for championships on a regular basis have in common? Like, certainly the last 4 national champions. You know, you look at the post-COVID years, the 2 Georgia teams in 21 and 22. What were the driving forces of those 2 teams? Elite defensive lines. Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, guys like that. Michigan in 2023, elite defensive line with Mason Graham and Chris Jenkins and I'm drawing a blank, Kenneth Grant this past season. Really good edge players with Derek Moore. And then, of course, in 2024, Ohio State had a great defensive line as well. You had JT on the edge. You had Jack Sawyer. You had I'm drawing a complete blank.
You had Tyleik Williams. You had
Tyleik Williams. And then you had Ty Hamilton on the other guy. Like, outstanding defensive line, great depth. And of course, now that those guys are gone, they're bringing in other young, talented players. And now Notre Dame is putting themselves in to do that because, to your point, Trev, when you bring up those FanDuel odds about being undefeated, which I think Notre Dame is second now. I think second right now.
Tied for 10 first.
And tied for first. Top 10 in chances to win a championship. You start stacking up those D-line classes, that's going to help you stack up deep runs into the playoff, which then only increases those things. And then that makes it easier to recruit the next year's class and the next year's class. So you're going to look, and I think this 2-year stretch where you've added guys like Chris Burgess and Davion Dixon and some of those players in the 25 class, and then you're going to look the 24 class with Bryce Young and Logan Thomas, and then you look to this 26 class, you're going to say, boy, that stretch right there added some big-time elite talent, and that's why Notre Dame is doing what they're doing. And it's been fun to watch. It's been very fun to watch.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Well, Brian, I think it's that time of the show, man. I think it's time to dive into some film. What say you?
Yeah, you know me, Trev. I'm always down for a little bit of film, man. I'm always down for a little bit of film watching. Let me just get this all set up for us real quick. Yeah, a little bit. Nice, beautiful Saturday. Beautiful outside, but I'm going to stay inside and watch some film. But first thing you're going to see from Elijah Golden in this film, Trev, is tremendous frame. Absolutely tremendous frame. He's listed as 6'4", 270. When I see him, I'm curious your thoughts on this, Trev, but when I see him, I see a guy that's got elite arm length as well and an elite frame. That 270 is going to be 300 easy, in my opinion. And he's going to fill out nicely. He's got really nice burst. This play right here so there's a lot I like about Elijah Golden on film, and the raw talent is outstanding. This right here is the one thing he's going to have to work most on at the next level, and that is he does this a lot. He stands up. Now, he's able to get away with it because he's got such powerful hands. And that's a big guy he's going after. And he rocks his back, knocks his back. He bends his back, excuse me, and then is able to disengage. But look how long that offensive lineman has no chance to get his arms inside on Elijah Golden. He's able to lock out, get off the block, and then get to the quarterback. Really good closing speed, but he's got to learn to play with better pad level. And this can be a major problem for a recruit, Trev. And I'm just going to pause real quick to make this point as you guys watch the rest of it is if a guy plays with bad pad level at the college level, it's going to hurt his power. It's going to hurt his ability to finish. It's going to hurt his ability to hold up at the point of attack consistently. And so when you see a guy play high at the young age, you've got to ask yourself a question. Number one, is it a technical problem? Or number two, is it a physical problem? Meaning some guys just have really tight knees and they're waist benders. And so when you come off the line and your knees are locked up, you're naturally going to lift up and play high because you're just a really bit of a tightly built player. You're not flexible. When I look at Elijah Golden, there's plenty of snaps where I see, especially some of the game film you see, where he does come off, he bends his hips, he sinks his hips, bends his knees, comes off and plays with good pad level. It's just not consistent. So when I see that, it tells me, okay, physically he can bend, physically he can play with better pad level. He just has technical woes that are keeping him from doing that. That's correctable. And so that's why he's not quite a top 100 player yet for me. But the fact that the skill set is there is why he has the 5-star upside grade. He's very raw fundamentally, but the physical skills are outstanding. When you can be as raw as he is, play the teams he plays, and have 29 tackles for loss and 10 sacks, you're a darn good football player. Look at that arm length right there. But look at the instincts, Trev. He sniffs this out. This is a swing pass. Look how quickly he sniffs this out, gets his hands on the football. That's where length comes into play.
Yeah, it's the physical tools are insane. Broad shoulders, big hands, long arms. I mean, he's also extremely strong. That's like the third clip in this video where he's just able to wall off a defender with one arm and make a play with the other. I mean, he is exceptional physically.
Look at that quickness. Look at that first step off the line. It almost looks like when a guy's quick, when you're like, did he jump off sides there? That's what you want from a defensive lineman. But this get off right here. And this is one, Trev, when you watch this clip here, this is one too. His initial pad level's good on this one. But watch as he engages the guy, then he lifts up. That's what I'm saying is it's a technical thing, not a physical thing. But this is an example where he certainly shows the ability to bend. But that quickness, the motor, that's another thing. He's got to play the little bit more of a consistent motor. Looks great on highlight films, but on game film, you see that he's just got to play with a little bit more of a consistent motor. But he's got really fast and violent hands too, Trev. And that's something that I absolutely love about a D lineman. Al Washington is obsessed with length. Like if you're not long, you better have something else that he's in love with, or he's not gonna be a big fan of you as a recruit. He loves length. And Elijah Golden has tons of that. But just that get off, that burst, it's impressive when he does it right. It really is. But I love his power. And you can see it like he's an inside guy to me, like a pure inside guy. He's a 3 technique all the way to me. I think that's absolutely where his game is best suited. There's no question.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think he just looks a little bit more natural there. I think his skill set fits a little bit more there. The other promising thing about Golden's film that I've seen, he's also a good IQ player as well. Like sometimes you see players who have like the physical tools, but they need a little bit of help technically. Sometimes that technical deficiency can almost leak over into your football IQ a little bit if you're not in the right spot, not at the right, you know what I mean? And so he's somebody that sniffed out a couple of outside zone reads. I mean, he's somebody that sniffed out a screen pass, got a hand up on it. It's impressive.
You see some of the clips where he's playing on the edge, you see his closing speed and his long speed, which you don't always see when he's playing inside because, they're engaging so quickly. But you see it on some of these plays. There's another play where he starts off on the edge and slants inside, and you can see sort of that long speed with him. It's really impressive. But the big thing with Elijah with technical, it's just consistency, Trev. Yeah. Can he be consistently dominant? And I talked to a source close to the program that said, that's something that Notre Dame has talked to him about is just, some of those consistency things. But when they went down and saw him this spring, and they saw him going through practice. They saw him applying a lot of things that they've talked about. So like he was taking the coaching and saying, hey, I've got to go out there and improve my game. And so that was something else that I think the staff was really impressed with. Like, look, he wants to be great. He wants to be better at football. Look at that fight right there. Coming off against a pretty good sized guard, center trying to double team him. Look at his ability to disengage and get off to the ball carrier here. That's really impressive. Really impressive. Look at that arm length though, man. Oh man.
Yeah, his arm length combined with his strength is wild.
Yep. But that's how you get 29 tackles for loss as a junior in high school, Travis. You're getting off the ball, or you're getting off blocks and getting to the ball. I mean, that's a very important thing. Look at that. Look at that burst. Look at that athleticism off the line. Very
Great feet,
impressive.
good change of direction in the backfield as well.
Yep.
I mean, there's running backs that try to cut back on him, and he doesn't get his feet crossed. I mean, he plays with a good base.
Here you want to see him like he exposes his chest a little bit. A better offensive lineman, like a Notre Dame offensive lineman right here, is going to get into his – because he lifts up. It's going to get into his chest and drive him out. That's part of that technical thing that he's got to improve upon. But when you're playing an inferior player, it's not going to get exposed in the same way. And that's something he's going to be good at. We're going to watch one of his spring film from a spring game here real quick, Trev, and we'll look at that, and then we'll finish up talking sort of about what's next. But this is from this past spring, just a couple clips from one of their spring games here from Elijah. You see him playing on the edge there. This is one of those plays I was talking about, Trev, where you see a little bit of that long speed that you don't get to see when he's engaging at D tackle, because he gets the guy so quickly. You see a little bit of that.
God,
look at those. Look at that.
He gets off.
Oh,
he gets off.
Takes
the line
that poor
so
guard.
Quickly.
A poor guard hasn't, and that's not a little guy. This isn't a little guy he's going against right here. Slants inside, just blows that guy up. And when he starts playing a little bit better pad level, plays like that are going to be even more impressive, because he's going to learn to get his hands a little bit underneath those guys and drive them back, and kind of really get underneath them that way. And it's going to be fun to watch when that happens. Really fun to watch. But this is against Clearwater. Again, he's a very talented player. Look at those hands.
Good Lord.
Like this is a coach's dream right here. A kid that, he needs the work, but the tools are there. He's got all the talent you want. You just got to coach him up. Well, that's what you get paid for. That's what you get paid to do, is to coach those guys up. It should be noted too that his high school coach this past year at Cardinal Mooney is Jared Clark, former Notre Dame tight end, also from Cardinal Mooney. So also from Sarasota. I think he went to Cardinal Mooney, but he's definitely from Sarasota. But that was a pretty cool connection.
No, that is
cool. He was part of that Carlo Holiday class. Yeah, I love the frame, love the size, love the athleticism. All the tools are there. You just got to coach them up. But that should be the easy part when you're coaching at Notre Dame. So that's the film breakdown on Elijah Golden. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing his senior film. Very much looking forward to seeing it.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, let's kind of tie a bow on this commitment video, and let's talk about what's next. I mean, 27 players in the 2026 class. Where do they go? I mean,
they're quote unquote done. Like there's nowhere else they have a need in the 26 class. They're done as far as needs. They met their needs at running back. They met their needs at quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, O-line. They got 6 O-linemen, now 4 D linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 DBs. So the needs are all met. Do I think the staff is going to still keep their eye on a few players, or maybe look for some late risers? Sure. Is there a potential, maybe another edge player they may try to flip if it's down the road? Maybe. Could there be another linebacker they target? Unlikely, but it's possible if somebody emerges. Like, I don't think they're just going to turn away talent that may want to come, but I don't know that they're actively pursuing any more talent in this class. I think there's a couple D linemen that they're still talking to that they like for depth in this class. And also there's some other positions where, look, they're talking to kids at almost every position in the 26 class, because you always have to make sure that you're protected in case a kid flips, in case a kid gets injured, in case your current roster goes through a major overhaul with the portal. So there's certainly some guys on the radar. But if they end the class with this group of 27, they're going to be happy. And they will have met all the needs that they have in this class. So I think that's where they are with the 26 class in general. And it's also true for the defensive line. Like, If Drake Quinn wanted to come to Notre Dame, they'd take him. Like I think that they would. Are they, I think Alistair Viejo is a kid that I could see Notre Dame maybe talking to still moving forward a little bit. But the way they look at it is we met our needs on defensive line and we got the guys we wanted. Now it's just about, am I turning this guy down? Am I turning that guy down? Probably not. If they wanted to come, I don't know they're actively pursuing them unless we see some attrition or some issues with the current roster. I think that could cause them to have to reevaluate some things. Let's say there's 3 really bad injuries and a transfer out from a position. Then you could say, hey, look, we may need to add another guy. They could also just say we'll fill that need for a year at the portal and go recruit an extra 27 kid as well. But I think for right now, the vast majority of the attention is on 27. And then you look at the defensive line specifically, Trev. What's interesting is this whole time that Notre Dame has been bringing in all these 26 kids, Utade and Dunham and Tiki and Elijah Golden and the other Drake Quinn and all those guys, Al Washington had a lot of 27 kids on campus this spring and summer, at defensive tackle and defensive end. I mean, Chris Whitehead, who's a big-time player, was on campus this summer. Obviously, you had Devin Robertson and Braden Parks were on campus this summer. Jeremiah Williams is on campus this summer, who's a big-time player. David Jacobs is a big-time defensive end that Notre Dame is after from Georgia in the 27 class, who also happens to be longtime friends with Teddy Gerard. So that was obviously good news, or is a good connection. But, I mean, you've already got – we were joking on the Pot of Gold Day, like, Al Washington, could you slow down a little bit, man? Like, you're offering a lot of guys. But a lot of those guys got on campus this summer, and that was an important thing. Chaz Gray from New Jersey is a kid that they got on campus this summer. KJ Green's another guy to keep an eye on. Jalen Mercer's a guy to keep an eye on. J.C. Brewer's an Indiana kid that they're talking to. Troy Bowens is another guy to keep an eye on. So it's a very, very talented and deep board. Andrew Rogers is another player to keep an eye on at defensive end. At defensive tackle, you've obviously got Richie Flanagan, who's the son of Jim Flanagan, younger brother of James Flanagan. And on top of the players we mentioned, they love Braden Parks. They love Devin Robertson. They've had Jeremiah Williams on campus already this summer. Sam Lejeune is another player to keep an eye on, Trev. He's a kid from Mississippi. Really big athletic kid. Could maybe play edge. Probably an inside guy. 6'4", 285, but twitchy and athletic that they like a lot. He was on campus this spring. They had 2 defensive linemen that I grade out as 4 stars from Mississippi on campus this spring for Notre Dame. And so you're starting to see Notre Dame, the whole Notre Dame's one of the new it teams. You're starting to see that with how many 27. Chris Whitehead's a 5-star recruit. At least he was when I looked in April. I'm pretty sure he still is. But he's a guy that also another Virginia kid that's a 5-star player. Yeah, he's top 20. I guess they haven't done their reveal yet of who's a 5-star. Right now there's only 7. But he's the number 18 player in the country on ESPN. So he's a big-time player from Virginia that they had on campus. And from the same high school as, I believe he's from the same high school as Jalen Elliott in LC Bird. So getting all those kids on campus this summer, KJ Green, David Jacobs, Chris Whitehead, Braden Parks, who's an Illinois kid, Jeremiah Williams, Devin Robertson, Sam Lejeune, they're poised now for another big-time class. But here's the thing. Because you met your needs in 25 and because you met your needs in 26, they go into 27 with the same outlook. They may need to go up to 5 next year because of kind of what some things I expect to happen with this year's roster, meaning I think some breakouts are going to happen this year that are going to maybe make them say, I don't know that we're going to get that guy for 4 years. So we might need to add an extra guy to the 27 class. So I think there's some things there. We might see some, especially on the edge. There's a couple guys that are playing end right now that might kind of quickly outgrow the edge, which might force them to need an extra guy in this class. But I think they'll probably bring in a 5-man class in 27. But the board's already absolutely impressive. It's an outstanding board already. And most of those kids have visited already unofficially. So they're ahead of the game in 27, and they're poised for another great defensive line class in 27. I do think how this year's line plays is going to have a say in that. Now the guys are healthy. You're expecting to see more from Boubacar. You're expecting to see more from Bryce. You want to see Josh and Junior take that next step. You want to see some, who steps in for Riley. And yeah, you had a couple guys play well in the couple playoff games, but but we need to see if they can do it for a whole year. So I think there's a lot of those kind of questions that 27 kids are going to see. But if the D-line's what we think it's going to be, I expect them to land another big-time class in 2027. And because, like we say it all the time, Trev, man, big-time players want to play with other big-time players. And you're not going to see a top kid. You're not going to see David Jacobs and Chris Whitehead and KJ Green say, well, I would have gone to Notre Dame, but they already got Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Tade. Because they're going to be like, well, they're going to play 4, 5, 6 defensive ends anyway, which a lot of teams are doing now. And like, well, I want to play a higher percentage of snaps. Well, if you're going to a team that's playing 15, 16 games, at the end of the year, your snaps are still going to be the same as what they would be on a team that's not very good or not as good, that you're playing, 15% higher snaps. But now you don't have the same wear and tear from a week to week standpoint. And so when you can have and I think that's what the Georgia game mattered. It was Junior made a big play, and Donovan made a big play, and RJ Oben made a big play, and Gabriel Rubio had some big plays, and Josh Burnham had a big play early in that game. It wasn't just one guy. It was a lot of different guys making plays. And kids see that. Kids have seen that stuff. They recognize that stuff. And they're saying, okay, that's something I want to be a part of. And this 26 class did it. Now it's time to do 27. And that's a big year for Al Washington too, Trev, because look, you want to be like those big time programs with championships, you got to start stacking these classes back to back to back to back. And that's what he's going to need to do in 27. But man, what a great job in 2026. We talk about what's next. I want to take a second to just enjoy this where we are now and enjoy the 26 class right now. Because I would argue this has a chance to be their best D-line class since the 2011 class that had Aaron Lynch and Stephon Tuitt and Eshek Williams. And the reason I say that I think it's better than the 2015-16 class, which was excellent. Dalen Hayes, Khalid Kareem, Julian Okwara, Adetokunbo Ogundeji, who were all NFL players drafted 5th round or higher, is they were all edge players. They were part of a rotation together. That 4-man class was elite. This 4-man class is elite. The difference in those two classes is this class, they can all play together. And that class, they could only do that on 3rd and 13. It's really the only time you saw all 4 of them on the field together. So I think that's a big piece of what makes this, in my opinion, even better than that class is. And I love that class. I mean, how many times Khalid Kareem hasn't played in Notre Dame since 2019, and I still bring him up in shows. Dalen Hayes, Adetokunbo Ogundeji, Julian Okwara, and I'm drawing a complete blank on Jerron Jones's little brother. Jameer Jones, yeah. He ended up moving to defensive end. From that class, he signed as a linebacker. He moved to defensive end. He didn't get drafted, but he started games in the NFL. So 5 edge players from that class, played in the NFL. It's just they literally signed 0 defensive tackles in that class. Yeah. And that's why I think this class is better than that one, because it has inside and outside. In the 2011 class had the 3 stud ends, but they still signed Tony Springman. They still signed Chase Hounshaw, who projected as an inside guy. There was still some interior presence, but even that class, as good as it was on the edge, didn't have the interior that this class does with Tiki Hola and Elijah Golden. And that's what I think makes this such an outstanding class, is you've got to impact players inside, impact players outside. And now you've got to try to go do it again in 2027. That's the life of a coach at Notre Dame, right? Great job, coach. Wonderful job. You did it. Now go do it again. It's okay, can I just enjoy this for 5 minutes? Sure, coach. And then when you're done, get back out there and do it again. And that's what the expectations are.
100%. We do have a super chat before we head out of here from Christopher Hardy. Appreciate the super chat. Great get for Notre Dame. How does the staff keep this class together?
Keep doing what you're doing. I mean, we focus way too much on that as a fan base, in my opinion. And Notre Dame has certainly had some losses in recent years. Deuce Knight last year, Keon Keeley, Peyton Bowen. But the number of guys that have left the class has been significantly smaller than you'd think it would be based on how people talk about it. And I think one thing that helps is the way they put this group together. There was no guys they pushed to jump in early. That's some of the loss they've had, is they would push guys to jump in now, and then we're going to hold on for dear life. This staff took a different approach. Look, I'd rather lose a kid now than push him to commit now, and then down the road he flips. That's worse than just getting beat for a kid when he makes his first commitment. Yeah. And I think that's an approach that should help them and keep winning. the end of the day, there's a chance somebody flips, guys. I mean, this is college football. Notre Dame is no different than every other team in college football in that they're going to have guys leave the class. That's part of life. I don't know anyone in this class right now that I'm worried about that with, but in this era of NIL, I mean, some school may say, "Hey, listen, I know you're committed to Notre Dame, but we're crushed at cornerback right now, and we're going to throw this amount of dollars at you. We're crushed at offensive line right now. We're going to throw this huge offer at you that some of these kids are like, I can't turn that down." That could happen. I mean, that's life. That's life now. So just keep doing what you're doing and not worry about who am I going to lose. Just keep building that relationship, keep that vision going, make sure that kids are engaged with each other. That's a big thing that this class is very strong as a committed group, and a lot of communication as a class. And I think those things can help as well. But if you lose somebody, you lose somebody. Go out there and get somebody else. I mean, that's just the way that it works. And I don't really stress a lot about that. I don't think Notre Dame's stressing a lot about that. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's really the key, because at the end of the day, if the kid wants to flip, there's really not a lot you're going to be able to do about it. If somebody offers him a big deal that you're not comfortable offering, because a guy may only be worth $250,000 for you because he's your third best player at a class, but for another school, he's the number one recruit at that position, and they may offer him $750,000 or $1 million, and you're just like, I'm not – sorry, man, I love you. We want you in the class, but we can't give you that. And if he leaves, he leaves. That's what he felt he needed to do. So that's how it works. But I'm not stressing about that. And because look, I promise you, there's several positions where if a kid decommitted, I know for a fact that there's at least 3 positions that I know of where there's a 4-star kid that would immediately be on the phone like, hey, I'll take that spot. I can assure you of that. And I'm not guessing, but it's just they got their numbers. And so that's and if they have another season like they did last year or anything like it, it's going to be a lot easier to get that done. A lot easier to get that done. So that's where it's at. Just keep doing what you're doing. And then if a guy does leave, you go find somebody else as good or better. That's what they'll try to do.
Well, that's going to do it for us here this evening on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Again, recapping defensive lineman Elijah Golden's commitment. The 4th defensive lineman in the 2026 class, the 27th overall commit. Huge pickup for Notre Dame moving forward. Now, on your way out of here, guys, please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family. But listen, there's college football on 2 weeks from today. And in 22 days, Notre Dame is going to kick off their season down in Miami. So be sure to subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. That's where all of the premium content is coming out on the Champions Lounge. So for Brian, I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.
And the gap closer shirt was dirty. That's why I didn't wear it today. So just so you know, he's a gap closer. This is a gap closer, but the shirt was dirty. So apologies. Have a great weekend, everybody.